Good afternoon, and I am the unfortunate between the lunch and you all. So my next 20 minutes is going to be talking about where the on-premise equipment evolution is happening in the IP video workflow. So the most important aspect of the IP video workflow today is there's a cloud play that is happening, there is an on-premise play which is happening where equipments actually take the video data and then put it up to the cloud. What considerations that are going on in the marketplace today in terms of what customers need and how exactly this IP video workflow is changing the way the video is being consumed and how these equipments are really actually helping to consume the video up on the cloud or onto any deliverable OTT market or the IPTV market. So my talk is largely going to be on what exactly the customers are looking for in the market today in the IP video workflow. If you have an equipment and the equipment has to take the video and then push it up. And I represent RiverSilica Technologies. We actually build equipment for seamless IP video delivery, and we sit in the IP video workflow, and we help customers to encode, transcode, decode, or stream the video to the OTT marketplace, specifically for the IP video workflow. And we extensively use software-defined video processing. We build video algorithm-based encode strategies, and which helps to accelerate and build quality for the OTT deliverable workflow. Given that, we have product installations across multiple operators who use our product for OTT workflow, basically. So from that experience, and what we have talked to customers these days, some of the important aspects that I'd like to touch base upon now are the following. See, one of the things that we see is most of the customers in their IP video workflow, they want flexibility. The flexibility is that they come up with different equipments. They have multiple playlist playout equipments, they have ingestion equipments, they have equipments that basically have to orchestratedly work with each other. So which means anybody who has an equipment that takes the video and then puts up to the cloud or to any OTT workflow, the most important aspect is that it has to be ultra flexible. The next important thing that we have seen is that customizability. See, the products today is not, the customers don't want a rigid product for their IP video workflow. When you have a rigid product, the ability for you to transform a particular IP workflow with an existing equipment infrastructure gets pretty difficult. So the most important aspect is that we need to have a product that could take it and then it can be made customizable in the marketplace for you in the infrastructure when you're building the on-premise equipment. And the ability for you is to have a modular infrastructure. So there is a today customers, what they need is, look, I have actually the playout system, I have this metadata information that I can give you, but for the OTT workflow, can you please give me only a particular part of encoding or particular part of transcoding? The flexibility that customer wants to spend, because the ROI, the return on investment the customer wants should be quick, and the total cost of ownership should be minimal. So the important aspect is that we need to have a modular infrastructure in the product that the customer can pick and choose amongst the menu that one serves. Having done, the most important aspect is IP workflow friendly. The important part is how do we get the IP workflow being friendly today? Because if you fit in a product, the product needs to get into an IP workflow with less of a fuss. The more fuss that we have and the ability to put the product in an IP workflow, the more complicated it gets. The challenges today in the marketplace are that the customer never wants something whereby you cannot fit in a particular product easily into his current IP workflow system or in the ingestion work group that he has. So we need to make a product which actually has to have an IP workflow friendly. So the other aspect is also, that how exactly the equipment kind of syncs between on-premise and off-premise. Today, cloud becoming a very important part, and an off-premise need for the video from on-premise to, orchestrate very well across. The most important aspect we see here is that an on-premise video delivery to an off-premise video delivery, the synchronization should be very well done. Otherwise, what happens is that if you have protocols, standards, and also there is no customizability with a certain platforms and certain on-premise equipments, the ability to transact video data becomes complicated. So many times, actually, if you have seen, you would have put together an IP workflow which goes to cloud, it just doesn't get done in a quick jiffy. It takes a couple of months for us to put it together, and it has to be minimized and for an IP video workflow to quickly get onto an OTT marketplace. So there are other things as we get into, or monetizable option. Today, if you actually walk across the south upper floor, you would find most of the folks talking about monetizability. The monetizability, the most important aspect is that what kind of actually metadata that you can give in an IP workflow for the video when it goes to a distribution setup, and how faster, how easily you could say change the ads, or you want to change the text, that are easier for a distribution perspective and monetizable perspective. So that's a very important part for the monetizable option. And a rich pre and post-processing. So post-processing and pre-processing is pretty important for managing quality. If you have, it's not all about workflow. The need for video quality for you to take it when you're doing an OTT delivery is a very critical aspect. And the more the video quality is, the more important that we need to start building, with the 4K, 2K videos that are going on the OTT market. So in an IP video workflow, the largest consumer being an OTT market, the video quality is very, very important. What kind of video quality that we need to give, how exactly statistically you can balance between the processing capability and the video quality. That is another important attribute that today in an on-premise video IP workflow that customers look for. And another important aspect that we look at is single window multi-workflow. So you need to have an interface that you can take it, and then you could actually put it up in an IP video workflow, and then you can click, you could encode, and you could click, you could do a decode, you could actually stream it. It has to come from a single workflow. If you don't have a single cockpit that can control from a single perspective, the IP video workflow sometimes gets too fragmented, and ability to turn around becomes a problem. So that's important thing as you look at a single window, multi-workflow concept. And jumping into the ability to get into a dense workflow support is very important. Maybe a single channel video input that you're taking, or multiple channels that you want to build. You want to build a form off-premise, or you want to build a form on-premise. You aggregate channels. You want to do many of these aspects. These aggregation channel, conceptually speaking, you need to build bigger forms. To build that, the optimization of the engine needs to be as good as and as ubiquitous as possible across minimal channel to maximum channels. So the most important aspect is the industry standard hardware. The market actually is more and more getting friendly towards industry standard hardware when you want to build an IP video workflow. The most important aspect is when you want to customize, when you want to keep a flexible fitment in your IP video workflow design, the industry standard hardware becomes a very important part, because the ability to quickly change. For example, if a customer comes back and says, I've got an IP video workflow, please, can you change this particular part, and I would need to monetize that in the next 1 week to go. The need for an on-premise equipment to quickly morph or adapt or to change should be quick. And that actually works very well with the industry standard hardware, and the ability to maintain for the customer to manage an industry standard hardware in terms of warranty, replacement, and so on and so forth, it gets all the more easier. And it gets friendlier because it's not complex ASIC-based solution. So having said that, the most important part is that how much is the lowest cost per delivered stream that I can give. As the OTT market is getting into a mechanism where when am I going to get my return on investment if it's going to be an OTT IP video workflow? In such a scenario, the most important thing that we see is the lowest cost per delivered stream. So given that perspective, These are some of the attributes that customers have started looking into how exactly an on-premise equipment needs to come in and the parameters that I need to do before I pick in and choose an IP video workflow. So given that, we thought we'll put together something to see what kind of actually attributes that need to get into in an IP video workflow. So we saw, and then we thought, all-encompassing need for an IP video workflow for a typical customer has some of these attributes. We need to have something in a single window cockpit that actually can take and do encode. It could take a transcode. It can do a multiplexing. So it can do a store. It can stream. It should be able to minimally mix and play. And it can add, secure their content and add manage it, so that you have a wholesome package that you could go and then give it in a particular on-premise. Take use cases where a telco actually aggregates some of the channels and then it tries to put an IP video workflow to the cloud. So what does a typical telco look like? I mean, it comes back and says that, look, I would like to actually be able to encode. At the same time, I should be able to transcode. And when I do encode and transcode, is it possible for me to locally stream as well while I actually push some of the transcoded streams uplink to a cloud or a distribution network? Having said that, okay, I would like to do all of these three, but why can't I actually do a little bit of storage so that I can do a catch-up VOD as well? So if a distribution network on an IP video workflow would like to have a catch-up VOD, the important thing is that you need to be able to quickly store, and you should be able to store it in a single platform. And that's easier for you to actually push it up, right? Having done that, I'd like to also stream. I'd like to get to the next level. I've prepared the video data. I'm able to uplink live. I'm able to store. If I want to actually, transcode it for files, all of that happening in a single place, in a single cockpit. Now that what I'd like to do is, I'd like to go and secure. So you need to build mechanisms of DRM, because the OTT market and the IP video workflow largely looks at DRM perspective. So put together a DRM packaging for the video to go to a distribution network, and going to the distribution network, we actually need to now make money out of it. So build markers, build ad Qtones, and then make it as a part of this particular video uplinked streams like HLS or RTMP or any of those which can carry the Qtones with which the distribution network can replace the advertisements, and then it goes necessarily to an end user who actually gets the ads based on his particular need or her particular need. So what we do is to see if an on-premise equipment, if it is possible for them to deliver most of this, and if with all of this, this becomes a sort of a wholesome package. So you need not have to have multiple different equipments that sort of put it together, and then I need to have multiple racks running multiple different what I call as functions in a typical IP video workflow. So we actually sort of went through that, talked to multiple different customers, may be telcos, may be channel aggregators, or typical broadcast equipment vendors or multi-system cable operators, and then we realized that one of the critical need is that in a dense or a typical non-dense environment, the most important aspect is that we need to have multiple of this IP workflow. Regardless of what it is, these IP workflow need to be stitched, should be able to work in tandem, it should be able to work independently, and the customer should be able to choose either modular or license-based, or it can actually be a single cockpit. So that's where we announced a product called as PixFix Versa, which actually can take encode, transcode, multiplex, store, stream, and it can decode as well on the same infrastructure. And then you can minimally do a bit of mix and play in the product, and you can create a secure DRM, and then you can build Qtones which you can take it and then get it distributed. A very efficient on-premise equipment helps you in a reasonably good return on investment and total cost of ownership. So this is how from a an approach of a modular perspective, a wholesome, encompassed, all-inclusive, multiple workflow in a single platform is what is the evolution that has happened in the past couple of years from where it started as a single hardware entity to all of it as an encompassed setup. So that's exactly where we find the on-premise equipment for IP video workflow moving, and underneath it, there are multiple workflow parameters or like encodes and transcodes and streams and et cetera, but the most important aspect is how one can sit in front of a single cockpit and then put it together in a single workflow. So that's exactly where we find the market is hitting at, and we find whether it's a entry-level number of channels or dense channels, we find this as a very interesting aspect. So that's quickly what we wanted to discuss with you, audience, and we actually have this PixFix Versa working in multiple markets. We find them going in broadcast market because it's all-in-one. We find in the OTT markets. We find our products applicability in enterprise and education market, and telcos and CDNs use it and government uses it. So that's because the fact that they pick and choose based on what exactly the workflow needs, they fit it in and then it works seamlessly. So that's exactly where we are heading. And thank you for the time, and we'll continue to evolve as the OTT evolves. Thank you.